Okay, thank you. We are up to item 3, deferred business. However, just before we carry on with that, I'd just like to ask the CEO to...
Can't shut the doors.
Can't shut the doors.
Sorry, Jen, can I switch you to move back, please?
Because it's open, Barry, because it's an open council. If we close the door,
I'd like to ask the CEO to say a few words.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor White, as people would have seen, was very emotional. His family's gone through a significant trauma. He needed to go home and has done so, supported by friends and family. He wanted me to pass on his thanks to councillors and to staff for their support, to him and his family, and for the kind words and things that have been said to him over this difficult time that he's going through. So he is an apology for the rest of the meeting, but he wanted me to pass on those words, which I thought was appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Item 3, deferred business. There is none. Item 4, councillor reports. Councillor Toohey.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor. My report is fairly short, but amongst a number of councillors, went out to, on the 24th of January, went out to the fingerboards and did a mine site tour, which was very interesting, and I did enjoy, and I enjoyed the hospitality of the people out there. The following day, the 25th, opened an exhibition at the Gippsland Art Gallery. Sue Fraser and Clara Jones, and I must say it was terrific. The artwork was varied, the mediums were varied, and it was surprising that there was so much variation from just 2 artists. Really good day, or evening I should say. The 26th, Australia Day. I went up to Bruthen this year as opposed to Paynesville. I've done Paynesville the last 2 years, but went up to Bruthen and thoroughly enjoyed it. A very different feeling up there to Paynesville. Not quite as formal, but very enjoyable. And the highlight of the day again to me was the Lions Club who catered. And, you know, again, those members of our community that give back to our community are just fantastic. And sadly, there was CFA people and others who couldn't be there. There was fire issues up further. But a very enjoyable day and a credit to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Toohey. Councillor Rotino.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was on leave from the 17th of December through to 7th of January. However, on the week ending the 21st of December 2018, there was an apology and retraction of statement made by Councillor Dick Ellis. This was printed in the East Gippsland News on the 9th of December 2018 and the Bairnsdale Advertiser on the 21st of December 2018. And the apology and retraction said that on the 30th of October 2018, at a meeting of Council, I made statements about the mayoral office and Councillor Rotino. I retract these statements. I unreservedly apologise to Councillor Rotino, and I am remorseful, and I, in the interest of the community, accepted that apology. On the 15th of January, along with yourself, Madam Mayor, we received some information about Workways Gippsland Engaged Mentoring program. And the representative from Workways discussed the merits of their mentoring program and the positive effect it has had on our region. Workways delivers the Gippsland Engaged Mentoring program in Bairnsdale, Orbost, Swifts Creek and Lakes Entrance. The program is about supporting young people at risk of disengagement from the education system and society. They provide mentors on a one-on-one basis who will become a friend to the young person and help them with career choices, further education, and enjoy other activities like craft, sport, and life experiences. Once a friendship is formed, the student and mentor can continue to work together to work through and overcome lots of life's challenges. It's a really meaningful thing for a region like ours, which has lots of disadvantage on lots of fronts, and in particular young people maintaining their education. Many regional organisations like East Gippsland Water have a significant involvement and commitment to the GEM program, and I believe our organisation could actually do more and have a bigger involvement, as we have presence right across the Shire. And I believe to this end, Madam Mayor, that you've asked for a briefing to come to one of our councillor briefings on having a bigger involvement. The other thing that I'd like to talk about is the 40th Australian Minnow Championships hosted by the Gippsland Lakes Yacht Club, which was launched by yourself, Madam Mayor. It was a national event and hugely successful, as they were into their 40th event. The Mayor welcomed competitors, families and friends to our magnificent Gippsland Lakes to compete for these national titles. There were competitors from all states and territories and as far away as Darwin. Minnows is a category for children aged between 8 and 15 years of age and wanting to enter into the sport of sailing. A really fantastic program. The East Gippsland Shire Council supported the Gippsland Lakes Yacht Club with this event through sponsorship. Again, it highlighted to me the importance of hosting such events, especially national events in East Gippsland. Again, like any successful club in East Gippsland, there were many of the club volunteers around for the week to ensure the visitors enjoyed their time here and on the Gippsland Lakes. Also a reminder that there is a compelling statistic that confirms that 30% of people who invest in our region were once a visitor. So just another reason to make sure that we continue with our events. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rotino. Councillor Reeves.
Thanks, Mayor. So there's two matters I'll note tonight. Firstly, Australia Day celebration, councillors and officers and those in the gallery. Barry, I just wanted to congratulate the award recipients across the Shire, and I also wanted to congratulate and thank the Orbost Rotary Club for their outstanding efforts in catering and looking after us at Orbost for relatively small numbers this year, actually. I think it was the heat of the day before Friday. I think everybody was just cooked on that particular Saturday, and it was hard to get out of bed. Secondly, councillors, tomorrow it's 10 years since the Black Saturday fires. And with fires threatening our local community, it's a timely moment to remember the fragility of our lives, our community and our environment. And I know personally what it's like to be in that situation, because in 2003 on Australia Day, I was with a strike team from Glenalladale, Sarsfield and Hillside, and we survived a terrible burning event at Kabungra in the Alpine fires. And East Gippsland and our residents are affected by fires and natural disasters so often. But what I think is the upside of this is that we are so much better at planning and preparing, responding and recovering from emergencies, including fire. And every community needs a LIMP, Local Incident Management Plan. When we as a Shire are active in this matter now, and I'm pleased to note that our Marlow Residents and Ratepayers Association recently distributed our LIMP in our little community, and every resident in Marlow has that on their fridge now. And I think it's important just to take a moment to remember those more than 170 lives who were lost in Victoria, many in Gippsland, to note the survivors here and afar, their loved ones and their friends of that terrible event 10 years ago. May it never happen again, but it's hotter and it's drier for longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too, on the 24th of January, attended the Fingerboards mine site tour. I attended the Australia Day ceremony in Paynesville, which I think was down on numbers a little bit also, but it was well organised and emceed by Martin Richardson. He did a fantastic job hosting it, and afterwards I feel a little bit guilty about this, but I I had not visited this place before, and I was truly impressed by the quality and quantity of the hard handcrafted wares at the Paynesville Craft Pavilion. Very impressive. This not-so-little organisation operates similar to a men's, or more accurately, a women's shed. They have over 100 members that work 364 days a year, which is quite an impressive feat for an organisation made up of volunteers. I hope that when their lease agreement is reconsidered by council, that it be renewed for the long term, because community groups like this play a vital part in the well-being and mental health, and as such should be nurtured. I attended the Australia Day citizenship ceremony here in this chamber, and I attended a planning consultation meeting, and on the 1st of Feb, I attended a Friends of Bats and Habitat East Gippsland community meeting in response to the extreme heat event that occurred on the day before Australia Day, when I believe it was the Australia Day weekend, when there was approximately 2,000 grey-headed flying foxes that died. So I met with this organisation among a lot of other members of the community to discuss best methods for assisting grey-headed flying foxes in future. I intend to get the required vaccinations so I can assist with bat rescues in the future. The grey-headed flying fox are a vulnerable species and play a critical role to our forests as one of our only long-range pollinators. It was also nice just to be there in the presence of a couple of baby bats that were getting bottle fed and a baby wombat, which made it nice. So until I get the shots though, no pats. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Australia Day was a bit of a fizzer at Omeo. However, the Lions did their usual excellent job in organising the egg and bacon breakfast, and was much appreciated by the minimal attendance. And we hope we can do better next year. Bushfires in the area was the main reason for the poor attendance, we think. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And there's a PS here. Jeff Cooper is the Chief Lion Organiser and does a great job. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Aside from the other matters, the visits that Councillor Roberts alluded to, I'll just run quickly through my report. Pleased to report having experienced a quiet and lengthy Christmas recess, with council meetings being concluded earlier than expected. This year's January start-up commenced with its usual gusto and with many interactions with our community. A couple of civic and other events worthy of mention include the Australia Day event at Lakes Entrance, which, contrary to the others, was well patronised with over 300 attendees. Entertainment this year was provided with the music of our Shire-sponsored brass band, Banstar Brass Band, and were really good, together with a most entertaining and appreciated bush poet. Lots of highlights and insights into the Australian culture. The Lakes Entrance Lion Club, like the Omeo Lions Club, were again the successful and unchallengeable organisers of the event. I also attended the citizenship ceremony. Before going to that, I'd like to mention the special Lakes Entrance citizens who were recognised here, and that was Mrs Judy Burgess, Senior Citizen of the Year from the Lakes Entrance Ambulance Auxiliary. Someone known to us, Miss Jamison Chester, a daughter of our local federal MP, who was our Junior Citizen of the Year from the Lakes Entrance Surf Club. Jamison's a delightful young lady and most worthy of that award. The Men's Shed was the event of the year, the opening of the Men's Shed, which Councillor Rottino, I think from memory, opened when he was Mayor. The team auspiced in the creation of this value community asset. People who recognised amongst the numbers were Mr Darryl Patterson from the Men's Shed and Mrs Wendy Brady and the fellow Lions of the Lakes Entrance Lions Club. A comment I want to make is Australia Day also gives councillors the opportunity to address their communities on matters that affect their everyday life. In my address to the community this year, I not only made mention of the celebration of our nation, but also to the challenges that face people on a daily basis in striving to be part of and enhancing this great country. In particular, I made mention of the challenges of the burden of mental illness upon the peoples of our country and the need for us to exhibit a more emphatic approach to the issue. The suicide rates are indeed depressing and impact on all of our communities and at any time. In doing so, I spoke of the great opportunity, actually I'll start again. In doing so, I highlighted the great opportunity our East Gippsland community currently holds with reports that the Hope Drug Rehabilitation Centre, said to be capable of housing up to 115 beds for those less fortunate, may soon start construction on its first stage. With the lack of adequate or sufficient mental health facilities reported in East Gippsland, what better opportunity is there for all of us as a community to unite with those associated with the care of others and encourage the state government to purchase the land on which the rehabilitation centre is to be constructed, provide appropriate funding and personnel, and thus provide us with a current day facility to address both the mental health and drug addiction issues of our community. Perhaps the Hope Foundation Board may wish to consider this suggestion. As an aside, I hope that this might have been picked up, but with the Chinese wall in existence, and I won't go into that. That all said, this year's celebration was yet another successful celebration of Australia Day and our great country. On another note, I'd like to congratulate our current Mayor and the 18 members of our community who became citizens of our great country on Australia Day. On a personal note, I would like to welcome my friend Mr James Murphy of Lakes Entrance and a past work colleague, Mr Tony Callaghan of Benstyle as Australian citizens. I've also been asked by a number of people to make mention of the work of Miss Alison Brewer and her committee for ensuring that New Year's Eve in Lakes Entrance was again such a success. In doing so, it would also be remiss not to acknowledge the positive impact the Chance Carnival has had upon the seaside holiday experience of Lakes Entrance for many over the season. Mr and Mrs Chant are to be congratulated. I would also like to make mention of the good work of the Benstyle Motorplex, Benstyle Motorsports Club, who in running their various events attracted around 10,000 actual visitors to our region over several meetings in January. The committee is to be congratulated not only for the events they hold, but on the wider benefit it brings to our economy. Many other sporting bodies must be envious of their success. And in concluding, I'd like to record with Council the passing of a most respected Benstyle and East Gippsland citizen in Mr Roger McComb recently. Many of us here in the Chamber will recall McComb's observations and suggestions to Council on improving the lot of East Gippslanders. My sincere condolences go to his wife, Catherine. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Peltz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Ellis, you gave me a fright. I thought you were going to quote President, the American President about the Great Wall. The Great Wall. One stage, but anyway. Yes, thank you, Mr Trump. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to say what a hot, dry summer we've had, and I don't think anyone is disappointed with the recent rain we received over the past weekend, and I managed to tip out 37 mils out of my rain gauge from the Benstyle property, so I just thought I'd just put that in. Australia Day for me was in Cann River and with our gorgeous community, which I was really proud to say won the Community Award for their Volunteer Acknowledgement Day, and it was just awesome. They were all there at the park in Cann River enjoying the day, and they were all doing what they normally do. 75% of the community up there are actually volunteers, and it's awesome. They're so nice, and they do the best they can on a really tight budget, and I just really wanted to commend the efforts that they've put in. The fingerboards visit that we shared with many of the councillors, Roberts, Rotino Tui, Ellis and myself and our Mayor, was really interesting, and it occurred timely, which was just after an interesting presentation from Calbar that same week. So it was really good to have the two together, and no one can deny that we haven't heard everything possible about the aspect of the proposal of the mineral sands mine. So I think we're over that, and tonight showed the passion of the community from the region, and you know, and also hats off to the Calbar representatives that were here in the audience amongst 150 delegates who were opposing the position. So, you know, I think all in all, we have still a process to go through, and there's still a time factor involved, but I think we'll get there with regards to looking after our community. In the middle of December, I attended the GHD Princess Highway Review in Traralgon from Sydney to Adelaide, which was initiated by our beloved Honourable Darren Chester, our federal member of East Gippsland. One of the great initiatives Mr Chester instigated whilst acting in his role as Federal Minister for Transport and Infrastructure was the review, which he came up with after being presented with the Princess Highway petition from the Seats group, which I chair. So I've been really pleased that this has been something we've been able to follow through and contribute to. And I have to say the meeting was well ran in 3 different locations on the day, being Hamilton, Geelong and Traralgon, and we all had a webinar link facility so that we could basically chat about our findings and share what we actually came up with, other delegates from the Western District and, you know, our fellow councillor counterparts. So it was good. You see them at the Train Alliance meetings and, you know, at the MAV Transport Infrastructure meetings, and it was good to be able to share a common interest in safety upgrades to the Princess Highway concerns. So, you know, it's great to be able to advocate on behalf of council and our community on better roads, safer travelling and more improved transport mechanisms around our communities. It's a really integral part of the work I've been doing over the 10 years of my term on council. The week before, GHD had also held meetings in New South Wales, and they had the same setup for their community, which was in Wollongong, and then halfway down might have been, you know, Bega. Was it Bega? I think, and somewhere in the middle, like a Shoalhaven or somewhere like that. Out of it all, we were looking forward to the findings of the improved safety upgrades for our communities and for the travellers who are actually visiting our region with caravans and boats and enjoying what our region can have tourist-wise for them. And that concludes my report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Peltz. I'll just talk quickly about the drought, which has been on the forefront of most people's minds in recent times. Just before Christmas, myself, the CEO and the Deputy met with the Coordinator General for Drought, Major General Stephen Day, who came to Wellington Shire to speak with local farmers, financial councillors, local business owners and council representatives. And feedback was given on the drought package and concerns, and we are expecting his report due this month. We also had a visit from the Honourable Jacqueline Symes, the Minister for Agriculture, who had further roundtable discussions with drought-affected farmers. The Drought Reference Group, coordinated by East Gippsland Shire, was reinstated and had our first meeting for 2019. We discussed many aspects of the drought, and it's well represented by a variety of stakeholders, including the CWA, VFF, East Gippsland CMA, Health Services and AgVic. And we'll continue to meet bi-monthly. And we also had a drought phone hookup with Darren Chester, our federal member. So as council, we will continue to work with the state and federal government and advocate for further assistance for our drought-affected communities. Australia Day for me was in Bairnsdale, and the celebrations were organised by the Bairnsdale Classic Car Club and supported by the Gippsland Classic Car Club, and they did a fantastic job in pulling together an event. And special mention to David Radford, who also put in a lot of work to ensure that that event ran smoothly, and he was also our MC for the day. And we also heard from our Young Citizen of the Year, Torrin Troy, who spoke beautifully. And I had the privilege of presiding over the Australia Day citizenship ceremony, and it marked 70 years since Australian citizenship was introduced into law. So it was a great day had by all, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Okay, moving on to officer reports. 5.1.1, council meeting schedule 2019. Mr. Radford.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Good evening, councillors. This report seeks a council resolution to set the dates, venues and times on which council meetings will be held during 2019. Late in 2018, councillors would recall that we held a debrief in relation to the 3 meetings that were held outside the chamber last year, namely Omeo on the 3rd of April, Lakes Entrance on the 5th of June and Orbost on the 3rd of July. The purpose of these council community meetings, combined with the alternating starting times between 1 and 6 p.m. of council meetings and the commencement of live streaming, has increased the community involvement and the awareness and engagement in council meetings and activities. The report before you tonight is the proposed council meeting schedule for 2019, and summary key points of the proposed changes from the traditional schedule are as follows. Combining the traditional, special and ordinary council meetings to maximise the best use of councillor and staff time. 4 council in the community meetings proposed outside of the council chamber in 2019 compared to the 3 that were held last year, and the towns nominated by councillors of Malakuta proposed for March 5th, Lakes Entrance on June 4th, Omeo on September 10 and Orbost on November 12. Localised community and council activities would be clustered around these meetings to maximise the involvement between council and the community, building on the success and positive community feedback that we received in relation to the departure in 2018. And this proposed schedule that's before councillors tonight would provide a council community meeting for each calendar quarter during 2019, and also allows for a winter recess from meetings in July, which is consistent with the other 2 tiers of government. Councillors would note that 2 meetings in the schedule that you have before you tonight are proposed to be held during June. The reason is this is due to tight timelines with the draft council plan and budget development, and it will also allow for the incorporation of submissions through the Section 223 process where appropriate. So the review of 2018 council and your community meetings identified only minor budgetary impacts, predominantly based around travel, and holding these meetings during the day will allow the minimal impact compared to night meetings, and that's what's been reflected in the schedule. So councillors, it's a requirement of our local law that the dates, venues and times for council meetings are set by a resolution of council, and if the schedule is adopted by council this evening, it would be widely promoted through our traditional digital communications channels such as local newspapers, of course social media, website and utilising local community newsletters. Councillors, there's a recommendation before you and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr Radford. Is there any questions, councillors?
No, I'm happy to move the recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Peltz has moved it, seconded by Councillor Toohey. Speakers for?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to include a point 3 on the recommendation. And my amendment, I think it's going to come up on the screen, perhaps.
Is this the council meeting schedule?
Ah, sorry. Withdraw all that.
Okay, speakers for. Okay. Anyone like to speak for Councillor Toohey?
Our initiative last year to hold some council meetings out in our community, I think was terrific, and to see 4 in here, I think is even better. So, really looking forward to getting out there and meeting people.
Councillor Rotino.
I'd just like to add the work that's gone into putting the program together is first class, and really delighted to see Malakuta included in there. It takes a lot more effort, but I'm sure that community will enjoy having us up there, having our ordinary council meeting up there on the 5th of March. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rotino. Councillor Peltz.
Thank you. It would be remiss of me not to say, I'm sorry. I delegate with my colleagues there, and I would like to say it's a great initiative to be back out on the road again for us councillors, because in the past we've always enjoyed the travelling and getting out amongst our outer urbs and getting amongst the community. So I think with regards to that, I think we have done there is a really great program in front of us. And also to note that there was a curious holiday time put in between June the 25th and our next meeting follows the 6th of August to highlight that they've actually given us a month of grace. So to know that we can get all the same work done in the same amount of time is refreshing to think that we actually have a terminated period in the middle. So I look forward to enjoying that as well and getting out and amongst the community. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Peltz. Are there any further speakers? No, if not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr Radford. 5.1.2, appointment of councillor representatives. Mr CEO.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I think the report is fairly self-explanatory in relation to why it is being presented, but there is an opportunity, despite the fact that councillors are actually appointed for the term of office, there is an opportunity after an election of the Mayor and Deputy Mayor to have a look and for councillors to determine whether they still have capacity to attend the meetings. Hence, that is why the table has been attached to this report for councillors' consideration. And also you'll see there's two appointments that need to be considered by council as well.
Thank you, Mr Basford. Are there any questions? No? Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Roberts.
Madam Mayor, try again. With this item, I'd like to put forward an amendment to the recommendation to include point 3. And point 3 reads that a comprehensive review of councillor committee representation, inclusive of industry forums, be completed and presented to our May 2019 ordinary council meeting. The review to include, but not limited to, the need for the council representation. Point B, a structured formal approval and reporting back process for external committee attendance by councillors, including industry forums, i.e. example ALGA in Canberra. Point C, a cost-benefit analysis be completed on what value our community is receiving by councillors attending forums and being represented on external committees. And point D, that I wish to be removed from as a committee or a second committee member for the Municipal Association of Victoria's Professional Development Reference Group, because I feel my professional ethics and standards and values don't align with the MAV's view of professional development. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Rotino. Do we have a seconder to that?
Can I just ask a question?
Yep.
Being point 3, does I wish to be removed as a committee member specify yourself?
Yeah. So perhaps we should have your name.
Thanks, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Rees, you seconded that. Just give Councillor Tino and Councillor Reeves seconded the amendment. Speakers.
For the amendment, I just think that we've had this sort of system and process in place for a while now, and like all good things, we should do a review. And if the review comes back and ticks all the boxes, well, so be it. But I think it's a good time to do a review, and I've checked with the timing to see if we can get it back by May, which will mean some sort of briefing before that meeting, and I'm assured that the timing's okay to do that sort of a review. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker or question?
Yeah, look, because this is such quick notice, and we only, I think Joe just mentioned it briefly this afternoon that he was looking at this, I didn't expect this to be here tonight. I've got no real, at the base I've got no real, but there are things there that probably we need to discuss this in a better manner, because we need to know exactly what we're talking about. Representations, which are quarterly meetings, you know, if we're going to have this coming back by May, it's perhaps going to be one meeting, you know, and then when you look at these representative meetings, the secretariat of each of these groups provide minutes and attachments, etc. So, you know, you're creating perhaps, and I'm only saying perhaps because I haven't given this enough thought, unnecessary demand or work for a particular council, no matter what the subject is. You know, I'd hate to be the councillor coming back from the audit committee trying to explain something when there is full minutes already available. Cost to benefit value, I really, you know, I'm not sure about what we actually mean by that. And then the conflict about professional development, I respect what you say. I respect you, Joe, and your training and your education, but I'd like to get an understanding of what that challenge is. And if you have some better skill, then gee, and the MOB are lacking, well, gee, you really should be there to sort them out, mate. So I don't know where we can, it's too early this, and perhaps we should be deferring this and having the matter as subject of a future council CEO discussion and bring it back, say, in March. I'm not trying to thwart this, but I'm just thinking it's a bit quick. And there are questions there that could be discussed. And I'd be happy for Joe to respond to me on that, because I'm not trying to make things difficult here.
Any further speakers? Councillor Peltz.
Yeah. Just curious as to, with the reporting back from a meeting that we've been to attending, let's say if I go to seats or whatever, I usually bring back the minutes and circulate them to everyone. Will that all be formalised in one single folder, or we'll be able to have it collated, and then do we actually have some kind of cost analysis attached to that particular issue, or is it just done on a councillor base thing? I mean, I'm happy either way, it doesn't worry me, but I'm just sort of wanting, spun it out and see how, how far it needs to go in regards to cost effectiveness and analysis, that's all.
Any further speakers?
I'm happy to speak for it. I think it's a good amendment. I think the two councils that I've been involved in, these have sort of just rolled along, and there's a great opportunity now to review it. I think it'd be very easy to produce some sort of reporting template that we can populate very simply and easily and share that. I think the cost-benefit analysis, well, that can be up to the officers to work out how best to do that, whether it's an annual or quarterly or meeting by meeting benefit, and whether it's a social benefit, a financial benefit, environmental benefit for our community. There is a cost to democracy and governance, but there's also, I think, a great opportunity to see the benefit as well. And the view of transparency and reporting to our community, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, I've had to think about it for a while, but I think it's worth prosecuting.
Thanks, Councillor Reeves. Any further speakers? Councillor Roberts.
I'd like to move to defer it. This is the first time I've read it, and I don't disagree with it in principle, but that's just by picking up. There was a small issue with the writing. Now I don't know if there's anything else wrong with it, but with just reading it once or twice, I can't confidently say that I support it, but I'm happy to consider it later on. And as Councillor Ellis said, the data that would come back in May would be pretty limited. Yeah, open to thoughts.
Any further speakers? Councillor Rattino, right a reply?
Just briefly, Madam Mayor, I mean, I'm not going to die in the ditches if this doesn't get carried, but a review is a review, and the relevant information can come back. We've been on this same sort of committee type structure for a long time. I'm sure there's enough information there for the CEO to come back with some sort of analysis, and where we take it from there, that's all this is about. If it's all fine, well, that's good. In relation to just responding to Councillor Ellis, no way known do I think I'm more superior than anybody, but my values on how... my views on professional development and developing people don't align with the way that I think the MAV do it, so I'd prefer not to be involved with that. But other than that, the bottom line is, stealing your thunder, Marianne, I need to make sure that whatever we're doing, that our community is getting some value out of it, and whether it's public value, whether it's environmental value, it's not all about money, but I need to be sure that all the things, and we all do a great job, we're going all over the place doing all sorts of things, but I want to make sure that our community is getting the best value out of it. That's all.
Thanks, Councillor Rotino. I'll put the motion. All those in favour of the amendment? All those against? Did you get that? Okay, motion carried. What was it? 5? Oh, now it becomes the motion. Sorry. Need to get that right. Okay, so now we speak again. Sorry, I probably mucked that up.
So we've accepted the amendment.
We've accepted the amendment and that now becomes the motion. Okay, so
And who moved the motion, the original motion?
Joe, and seconded by... I'll move the amendment. Oh, no, Councillor Ellis and Councillor Roberts.
Isn't this interesting? I've got to support a motion I just voted against. Now, how does that work? This is a difficulty, isn't it?
Can you revoke your support for it? I'm curious. You can say I no longer support it.
The trouble is that I support the actual major recommendation.
Yeah, you support.
All right, what I'll do is I'll speak to it by simply saying, councillors, I do support the appointments and the drive of the particular motion before us. I had genuine hesitancies in relation to dot point 3 for the matters that I've outlined, but I do recommend that you do support points 1 and 2 of this particular motion. And I'm talking in circles, but we've had a lot of circular discussions, haven't we? So I put the motion to you. Please support it.
Okay, are there any other speakers? No? I'll put the motion to. All those in favour? All those against? Councillor Buckley. Motion carried 7-1. Thank you. Okay, 5.1.3, petition requesting expression of interest process to occupy council-owned property at 55 Palmers Road, Lakes Entrance. Miss Kaya Cashman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Circulated to us that amendment, won't it? Because we haven't received it.
Yes, we can circulate that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ms Cashman.
That's fine. At the council meeting held on the 11th of December, council was presented with a petition requesting council to explore the possibility of undertaking a commercial expression of interest process for the occupancy of the property at 55 Palmers Road, Lakes Entrance. In receiving that petition in December of last year, council officers noted that a report would be forthcoming to this particular meeting, whereby that expression of interest proposal would be considered. However, officers, when investigating this request, felt that in the interest of the broader community, the future use of 55 Palmers Road required considerable investigation and further discussion and rigour. So the report presented to you tonight identifies some of the historical and future elements requiring consideration of the property's use both now and into the future, with some of those being the decisions that have already been made by council in respect to the future use of that site, the opportunities that may be available to council to maximise the return on investment for the community in the short to medium term, the longer term role of that particular site in respect of the Lakes Entrance Northern Growth Area, which is now forming part of the East Gippsland planning scheme, the council's internal operational requirements, and also the unique tourism opportunity that may well be realised by an expression of interest process. So given the need to comprehensively determine whether or not a commercial expression of interest process is in fact the most prudent use of this public asset, and whether it complements the broader requirements of the Shire and its residents, officers would like to request sufficient time to engage an external consultant to comprehensively investigate this notion, with the intent of being to present the final report to council at its August 2019 meeting. With that said, and as a matter of courtesy, officers will, as part of that recommendation, officers will be required to write back to the head petitioner to explain the reason for this particular request as a matter of courtesy. So with that, if there are any further questions, I'd ask you to consider the proposal in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cashman. Are there any questions? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In order to engage an appropriate external provider and source all the relevant information to make a more educated decision on this, do we have an approximate time frame or costing that this will incur?
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. No, not as yet. We will be working on that, obviously, depending on the decision tonight. That will be the first and foremost matter that we need to address.
Ms Bennett.
Just through you, Madam Mayor, it will depend on the scope. The scope will be something that's put together by a cross-organisational working party and will be brought or will be circulated to the councillors for reporting. And once we've had scope, then we will be able to go out and tender and discover how much it's likely to cost.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about how we're going to manage the cost of this and what we do. So what are we, tonight, if we approve this, it goes out and then it will come back to us as a report to an ordinary meeting advising us of the cost, and council will then have to vote on whether we go ahead with that work.
That decision, of course, is in council's hands, but what I had envisaged was more a workshop with councillors around what's in the scope. And in terms of managing the cost, that again comes back to the scope, which can be expanded or contracted depending on how extensive the research is that council wants undertaken. Officers believe that we have that view, but that's the purpose of circulating that again to councillors so that that can be checked.
Any further questions? No? Okay, there's a motion. Do we have someone to move it? Councillor Attino, thank you. Councillor Toohey, second. Speakers for.
Just briefly, Madam Mayor, this is a strategic piece of work. It's well overdue for our community. Our community deserves to know that we are working all our assets to the best community value, ensuring that we always continue to deliver the best public value on all our assets. Our community deserves this, nothing more, nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Toohey, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with what Joe has said. Making sure that we utilise our assets to the best of our abilities is one of the roles that we play as councillors. So going through this process, I think will allow us to better understand just what it is that the expectations are and to work out where potentially we want to head with this. So I think this is a good idea.
Thank you. Councillor Peltz.
Yes, I'd just like to make notice that we have actually, probably within the last 3 or 4 years, we did look at trying to get the fisheries or one of the federal government, the governing bodies when they were trying to decentralise into this building. So to just for the community to fully understand, it is something that we have actually initiated and tried, but we were unsuccessful, and they took a position on Bullock Island instead with at that CMAC Centre. So the bottom line is it is something that we have been engaged in actively within the last 18 months anyway, and this is just a further push to see if we can facilitate some more stimulus and interest in getting another person or some kind of income coming in from that body, from that building or that site. So yeah, really good initiative, and look forward to the outcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Peltz. Councillor Ellis.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I think we need to consider this as part of a wider strategic issue, as Councillor Attino referred to, in management of assets. I think I can see this justifying the need for us to look into our other assets, such as the Service Street store there, and how we deal with that particular building and the rentals associated with that. We've previously looked into this. It's probably the start for the CEO and company to look into the proper asset management of all of our facilities, our work yards and what have you, so we could perhaps use this as the wider picture to look into asset management as a total. Do we keep open our shop fronts in places like Orbost or Romeo? Do we, is there value there, as well as looking at the facility in Lakes Entrance? It would be a good opportunity to take advantage of that and widen the scope so that we can now then turn around to the community, looking backwards, of course, because this is not the first time this facility has been reviewed, and then looking to the forward with our total asset block. So I encourage the CEO to open his mind to the wider asset base that we have and use this as the catalyst for it. So I'll support the motion with that sort of basis coming up out of this discussion.
Any further speakers? Councillor Reeves.
Thank you. Look, interesting thoughts, Councillor Ellis, and it crossed my mind too that it took a poke from the community to actually motivate us into action here, and if there, in terms of a petition, and if there was a way of systematising that, but also perhaps placing some limitations. What infrastructure or facilities do we not go investigating? I mean, boat ramps, obviously, that sort of thing. So there has to be some limitation. But yeah, that's a great challenge for the CEO, and I support this.
Thank you. Any further speakers? No? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms Cashman. Item 5.1.4, Finance Report, period ending 31st December 2018. Ms Liz Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Finance Report is for the first 6 months of the year to the 31st of December 2018. There is a range of information attached to the report, but this report is a statutory report where we report our year-to-date performance against the year-to-date budget and also provide a forecast for our end-of-year position. Councillors will note that the operating surplus forecast for the full year, as had been reported in the first quarter, is less than what we had in the budget as a result of projects that were not completed until the current financial year, but the cash for those projects was already in our bank. Also to note, which councillors are aware, that albeit this year is forecast to be a relatively small operating surplus, that was impacted by the advance payment of the just over $7 million of the current year general purpose grant from the Victoria Grants Commission. So having said that, there's a range of information attached to the report. There are no concerns at this stage. Our year-to-date result has been impacted by timing of some of the payments for supplier payments and contractor payments and payments for some consultancy works, and you'll see in terms of we're slightly underspent in terms of our expenditure for the first 6 months, but at this stage there are no major material variances apart from the ones already reported. There has been some minor adjustments to some income and expenditure items, and to note also the increase in the interest on investment forecast as a result of us, some delays in the capital works from last year and the prepayment of the Grants Commission funding. So we've been able to earn some additional interest, which is good. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions, councillors? If not, do we have a mover? Councillor Rotino and Councillor Reeves, thank you. Speakers? Councillor Rotino.
Thank you, Ms Collins, and again, Liz, I'd just like to thank you and your department for the great work that you do in actually bringing all these reports together. Having spent some time in finance in a previous life and being tagged a friend of finance, I really appreciate the work that goes in behind these final reports. So thanks, Liz, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rotino. All right. Any further speakers? No? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Ms Collins. And 5.1.5, Draft Rating Strategy 2019-20. Over to you again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The draft rating strategy is an important document in terms of the budget development for the 1920 year. And there's only been a few changes in terms of the strategy, and they relate to the municipal charge and the modelling in of various scenarios to bring in a reduced municipal charge into the mix in terms of the calculation for the rates. It isn't proposed at this stage to change the differential rates, and one of the main reasons for not looking further into other models for the differential rating is that this is the first year where the Valuer General Victoria is undertaking the revaluation, and it's an annual revaluation of all rateable properties. Previously it was every second year, but in terms of the impact of that through into the individual category of ratepayers, that's yet to be known. The other, why this also has come forward as just a single year rating strategy once again, is that in terms of the proposed new Local Government Act and where that's at, that it allows us then to look at any changes that we may need to make in terms of our revenue and rating strategy if that comes to fruition into the near future. So in terms of the modelling that's been done for the rating strategy, it does propose that the municipal charge be reduced to 14% of total rates and charges, maximum 14% from the 18% that it was sitting at. And in terms of, there has been foreshadowed, if the new Local Government Act was to come in, that would be no more than 10%. So that gives us a step down, because that does lead to a redistribution of rates amongst the three categories of ratepayers, just by way of the change in the rate in the dollar that's required. Same amount of rates, just a different distribution. There is information attached to show the impact of the various models to the document. I guess the other thing just to note also is the 2.5 a cap for the rate that will be imposed for the 1920 year that Council will be complying with, and that we won't be seeking a variation to that. There's other information in there in terms of payment options, etc., that Council do offer and include in the rating strategy. So happy to take any questions on that, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Ms Collins. Questions, councillors? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms Collins. Has there been any considerable changes to other service charges, like service charges and waste collection charges?
So at this stage, in terms of the fees for waste collection and the waste fees in general, the cost recovery approach is used for the waste recovery in terms of working out what the domestic garbage charge would be. The fees and charges for waste are included in the draft fees and charges for all the tipping fees, but in terms of the garbage charge that sits on the rate notice, it sits outside of the rate cap, and it's very much used in the total model of full cost recovery for waste services as we're working through in conjunction with the rating strategy.
Sorry, so I'm a little bit slow. That was good. That was well done. Has there been any considerable charge to waste collection fees?
At this stage, it would be proposed that the garbage charge that's included on the rate notice for the curbside collection would increase at around about the 2.5 to 3%. That's what we would be modelling in at this stage. But once again, until we've actually finalised all the costs for waste, that may need a further review. But they will be put separately to Council through the budget process for a review as well, and a tick off. Yes.
Thank you,
Liz. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks. Councillor Peltz.
Ms Collins, if I just may follow up with from Jackson's comment with regards to the waste. When you said it was we're trying to get to full cost waste recovery, are you saying or referring to what was, and correct me if I'm wrong, what was brought in a couple of years back where we were actually aiming to get 100% cost recovery with regards to our waste, knowing that the Chinese had actually decided not to take commercial waste from our region. So I was just wanting a bit more clarity in that area.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Yes, there has been a number of costs that have impacted on that total cost for that waste service. And in terms of the waste strategy, there was a stepping up of fees over time in the normal fees and charges that Council was working through. In terms of how that's going to come out for this next budget and going forward, where it was projected that there would be significant cost increase for the processing of the green waste and the transport of the green waste, as well as the impact on the cost for recyclables. We'll work through that as we work through the budget process, and we'll bring those waste will be, if you like, considered not separately but as part of the budget review process with Council for further discussion in its own right, because there's a number of things that the waste area are looking at in terms of how they may deal with those additional costs and in terms of the recovery, whether that's a full cost recovery this year but into what they plan to do. But that's where we should be aiming, but there's obviously steps along the way. So that will form part of the budget workshops. More information.
No worries, thank you.
Councillor Ellis.
Just so as to clarify this full discussion so there's no misunderstanding, this document and this discussion this evening is not about fee increases or waste management fee increases at all, Ms Collins?
No, thank you, Councillor Ellis. No, that's correct, even though it does lead to those questions. This is really about our general rates and rating strategy, use of municipal charge, and also about some of the options that we actually adopt as council for people to be able to pay their rates. Yes.
Thank you. So I would encourage anyone to read the briefing sheet to see that the balance of percentages on rating strategies and percentages that will be the subject as the base of our rating process is to be said in this document. We will be working through the budgeting process over the next 3 or 4 months for any other issues that arise as in the normal budget process.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. While we were discussing the change in the municipal charge, I wanted to ask if you could foresee any continuation to the reduction of the municipal charge. I know we're considering it if we'll be required to do it if there's a new Local Government Act brought in, but do you see if the new Local Government Act isn't brought in next year that we'll continue to reduce the municipal charge amount to get it closer to 10%? 10%.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. That will be a decision of Council. It's the Council decision in terms of the adoption of the rating strategy and how they may use the municipal charge. So if it wasn't legislated to move that back down, Council, it's up to the Council to decide if they wish to do that, and then that just moves how the rates are distributed. But certainly that's just a Council decision.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Buckley.
Oh, this is not a question, this is just a comment that I'm opposed to the municipal charge. You know, I don't think it's fair that you should have to pay if you've got a vacant block for a service charge for services you're not getting, and there's about roughly half the councils in Victoria don't even have it. It's one of those confusing, devising things. So I'm going to oppose this on those grounds. So thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm opposing the budget. My suggestion is we do away with it altogether and be done with it. And
you might like to argue that in debate.
Say again?
You might like to argue that in debate.
Yeah, okay, well that's my position now.
Okay.
Thank you.
If there's no further questions, then I'll ask to have a mover.
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thanks,
Madam
Councillor Tino. Is there a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Peltz. Speaker.
Madam Mayor, I don't want to say a lot other than I urge all councillors to follow on from what Councillor Ellis was saying, to actively participate and understand the implications of the rating strategy. All assumptions and changes need to be included as part of the strategy to allow our staff significant time or enough time to complete all the necessary complex calculations, computations and scenarios to deliver a balanced budget against our rating strategy. It is not fair or good governance or being open and transparent to leave this to the final meeting where we adopt the budget. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rotino. Councillor Peltz.
Yes, I'd just like to say I'm really refreshed to see Councillor Buckley's lifelong ambition to reduce or get rid of the municipal charge. At least we're reducing it finally, and we've been a contentious issue ever since we've been on council, but I'm really refreshed to see that we're taking the line of trying to reduce at this stage and getting in front of the ball game, so that when the new Local Government Act comes in, it's not so impactful on our community. I think it's responsible governance, and I think it's really responsible of us to be initiating this to our community. So I'm delighted to be seconding this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Peltz. Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to the motion. I think it must have been about this time last year that I contacted Marianne Bennett saying that I wanted to run the numbers on removing the municipal charge, and I nearly heard her fall over the phone. But what I was meaning to say that I would like to see it considered for the following year, and here we are. We don't quite have the municipal charge completely abolished, but I think it is a good step in the right direction, and I would like to continue to see this sliding scale continue that way. So thanks, Liz. Thanks, Marianne. Thanks all.
Thank you. Further speakers? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried 7-1. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Liz. 5.1.6, review public space closed circuit television surveillance policy. Ms. Kaya Cashman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, before you tonight is the annual review of the current closed circuit television surveillance policy and the code of practice that accompanies that particular policy. In the mid-part of 2018, you will be aware that East Gippsland Shire Council was subject to an audit of their CCTV program by the Victorian Auditor General's Office, which scrutinised the controls and processes that Council currently have in place for recording and administering the content captured upon those CCTVs. While East Gippsland Shire Council did fare well as part of that particular audit, VAO did make further recommendations to improve the strength and rigour around our oversight of that program, which have been captured within this policy. With that said, the other changes that have primarily been made to the policy in itself is that we have transferred that policy from the old template to Council's new policy template, which was adopted. The other option that we are wanting to seek your consideration on is, now that this program has been in place for quite some time, that the review and adoption of the policy and the code of practice become a 2-yearly event rather than it being an annual event, given that council officers feel that the processes and the controls within that policy now give us a little bit more surety around the administration of the CCTV program. So the Council's Audit and Risk Committee have reviewed both documents prior to it being tabled here tonight, and noted that there weren't any matters of substance that needed to be amended. And further, the CCTV Steering Committee, which is made up of a group of representatives, local Chamber of Commerce, Victoria Police, council officers and the maintenance technicians for those particular program, have also had input and insight into the current version of this particular policy. So I'm happy to field any questions on the code of practice or the policy. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Cashman. Questions? Thank you, Councillor Rotino. Seconder. Thanks, Councillor Roberts. Speakers.
Madam Mayor, just quickly, this was a potential non-conformance that at the time was highlighted in the Auditor General's report, and unfortunately some local media outlets chose to try and make a story out of nothing. The identified non-conformance was a challenge for us as an organisation to close a loop of a potential issue. That piece of information was unfortunately left out of the reported issue last year. Continuous improvement always is and always will be an area of focus for any good organisation, and I recognise that, and thank you, Ms Cashman.
Thanks, Councillor Rotino. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to reiterate what Councillor Rotino has said, but I'd also like to continue to see Council, especially in this space, to take a proactive approach to maintaining these policies, because these ones are critically important and can be really sensitive, as outlined, if the media picks these things up. And we're dealing with people's privacy here, and we should be on the forefront of policy and not playing catch up. So hopefully we can maintain and even lead the way like we are in other areas. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. Any further speakers, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? The motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms Cashman. And 5.2.1, Victoria State Emergency Service Memorandum of Understanding for support of Vic SES units occupancy arrangements. Ms Cashman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, councillors, before you tonight is a proposal based upon a memorandum of understanding that was executed between the Victorian Government, the Victorian SES and the Municipal Association of Victoria in respect of the lease arrangements for the sites occupied by Vic SES volunteer units across Victoria. Part of that memorandum of understanding was potentially a change to the funding operations of those particular sites that fall under the auspice of the MOU. And in terms of the sites here in East Gippsland that do fall under that particular the control of that framework is the Bruthen SES site, the Can River site, the Malakuta site and Orbost site. So following discussions with the Director Corporate of Vic SES and the local regional director, the council office is actually set to determining whether or not the proposed changes to the lease arrangements under the MOU were in fact fitting of council's, I guess, strategic direction for some of those particular sites. And it was discovered that while we do agree that there are some of those sites where we can move our responsibilities to Vic SES, there were some parcels of land where those sites sit that could potentially be gifted per se under the Section 191 of the Local Government Act to those particular sites. There was a relatively large amount of work done in terms of determining whether or not that was in fact an appropriate discussion and question to be put to you, and also some financial analysis of not only the cost savings that will be attracted because we aren't funding those particular sites now for 50% of their operating costs, but also the reduction in costs in terms of insurance-related premiums, maintenance, and those ongoing, I guess, financial implications that could be part of that discussion. So the two in mind in that respect were those sites at the Orbost 5 Wolseley Street address and the Can River 29 Monaro Highway. And those, we understand that they do have some financial value and they could be realised as a gain for council, should they wish to realise that at some point and sell those properties by themselves. But council officers believe that, you know, in order to effect a positive relationship and make sure that those services continue well on into the future, that it would be worth considering that we enact Section 191 of the Local Government Act and transfer those particular sites to Vic SES for nil consideration. So we have that power under Section 191. The other thing to note that normally when we undertake such a process, a Section 223 is required, but because of the fact that we will be transferring that, because it's actually being transferred to a public body, the requirement for us to undertake a Section 223 process for that particular transfer is not needed. So that's something to consider. In respect of the Bruthen site at 51 Main Street, Bruthen, there was a significant amount of internal consultation was taken place, and it was felt that although we do want to support the Vic SES unit at that particular site, the proposal under the agreement was that that was going to be a very long-term lease, and it was considered that perhaps wouldn't be the best fit for the strategic objectives for that site for council moving into the future. So we're recommending that it has about a 12-year term remaining on the current lease agreement, and we are proposing that we would just run that particular lease agreement through, and then we would be looking to liaise with Vic SES at some point in time to try and offer a balanced lease arrangement whereby council's strategic objectives for that site might be changing, but we don't want to impede the growth and the sustainability of that service for the Bruthen community as well. And finally, the Mallacoota site at 35 Lees Road, Mallacoota, that is currently a hybrid of sorts, whereby the council, the building is owned by council, however it's situated on Crown land. So the recommendation in front of you is suggesting that we, again, under Section 191 of the Local Government Act, transfer the building to Vic SES. And they have made it known that they're quite willing to assume the Committee of Management responsibilities for that particular site as well. So those are the four that fall under the Memorandum of Understanding. And the other thing that we also undertook at that point in time was that the Bensdale Vic SES unit, the lease arrangements for that particular site were also up for review as well. And so officers are recommending that with that, and it's quite a relatively easy process, that we reassign that lease to Vic SES, taking away any responsibilities for that particular arrangement moving forward. So the attachment 1 is, like I said, a detailed analysis of the financial implications. So there will be savings financially in terms of operating costs. But bearing in mind that there will be potentially some, a negative impact, for instance, if we decide to transfer those parcels of land at nil consideration to those sites. So that would be a decision for council to make. So I'm happy to field any questions on that report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peltz.
I'm just curious that if we were to go ahead with this, the state of the buildings are at 100%, repaired and being able to be used now. Would there be any time in the future that these bodies would come back to us for funding to do repairs in regards to upgrades to their buildings?
Thank you, Councillor Peltz. It's probably a little bit outside of the scope of this particular report. Normally when we transfer any land with associated infrastructure on it, the responsibility for that is assumed by the purchaser. So I can't speak for those particular groups coming back at some point in time, but in terms of standard contractual arrangements, the liability would transfer to the Vic SES.
Councillor Roberts.
Explain like I'm 5. So for a nil consideration transfer, is that essentially a sale, a gifting of the property? And if so, is there a reason why we're not just looking at a very low cost lease arrangement, long-term lease arrangement, something similar to the Benambra school site?
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Look, that was considered, and I think that, and the Director Corporate and Director Community Strategy are welcome to join the conversation. But in terms of looking at the ongoing costs that would be associated with keeping that at a low peppercorn rate lease, it started to tip the balance in terms of it being a financially viable option for us moving forward. There, like Councillor Peltz said, there will be an injection of funds that would potentially be required to keep those buildings up to some sort of specification, but I guess it was just thought that this would be a really good public service to be able to offer that and potentially reduce our longer-term costs.
Well, but the reason I compared it to the Benambra School site is because they're liable for any maintenance costs in that lease period. So a model similar to that.
Yes, but I guess that there's also the other on costs that, you know, like we're looking at other potential parcels of land that we might want to be realising at some point in time. That certainly could be an option for you, but I guess those ones where Vic SES are concerned, that we want to make sure that they have a secure and stable place to stay for quite some time, and that this may be the approach that we need to do in order to affect that.
Ms Bennett.
I agree with all of that, of course. If I could just add, though, one of the major considerations here is that yes, we can do, absolutely we can do that, and that is very much in the hands of council, but the likelihood of those sites, most of those sites except for Ruthen, being used for anything other than SES sites is quite limited. So what we're doing is maintaining the buildings in our ownership, and in virtually all our leases, day-to-day maintenance is the responsibility of the lessee, but our responsibility is structural maintenance and repairs. So the longer we have the buildings, the more chance of a greater expenditure.
Yeah.
And the odds of us being able to, if you will, reclaim the buildings for some other use is, we consider, quite restricted, except in the case of building.
Councillor Peltz.
If we were to do this and pass it on, are there ongoing costs to the SES in regards to rates? Do these then become rateable properties? Can anyone answer me?
Yeah, well, I was just querying my colleague just to make sure that the Vic SES is in fact a state government entity. Assuming it is, yeah, then there won't be rates.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure we weren't giving them a banana and coming back with a potato or something. Thank you.
Other questions?
I'm not sure how much, what the support is around the table, but I'd sort of like to see maybe an option B too, because there's quite a lot to be considered in the recommendation. I might be asking too much, but that's just my initial feeling. Happy to take guidance from other councillors.
Councillor Toohey.
Mine's only a comment, and I was coming from your position during the previous conversation that we've had in regards to this, and you know, realising the financial benefit from getting rid of an asset was where I initially come from, but the benefits to the communities that they are in, the long-term benefits to the communities that these buildings are in, was something that was pointed out to me in the last couple of weeks. And I must say I have sort of changed my attitude towards that, because at the end of the day there are some cost savings, and I hate losing an asset. We're all trained from when we're young to gather assets as we go, but from this point of view I believe this is a good community outcome moving forward, and it does allow these the SESs to actually invest in where they are and to remain where they are and to remain as part of the community. And yeah, I like this idea. I think it's a good workable idea. Just a comment.
If there's no further questions, do we have a mover of the motion? Thanks, Councillor Tino. Thank you, Councillor Toohey, seconding. Speakers, you've sort of just said what you were going to say. Yeah. Councillor Tino. Yeah. Any further speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Motion carried 7-1. Yep. Thank you, Ms Cashman. 5.3.1 Capital Works and Landfill Rehabilitation Projects Report 2018-19 as at 31st December 2018. Ms Weigel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is really the companion report to the finance report that was presented earlier by Ms Collins. As she explained, hers is a statutory report, so it has a certain format that it must follow. And we like to give you a little bit more information around the capital program. So it is for the same period, and you will find a lot of this information is actually in the statutory financial report as well. However, it just summarises a little more for you. It's been a busy half year, and this report gives you a summary of the movements and the forecasting for the program in that full 6 months, and then the movements within the program for the last 3 months, and seeks you to adopt the report and also adopt and note those movements within the report as Appendix 1. As Council is very aware, it's been a very big program that we are attempting to deliver this year, somewhere around the 50 million mark. The current forecast is that we expect a $51.6 million program, and that is where the budget is sitting at the moment. We expect that in the next quarter there will be some additional changes to that forecast, but that's where we're sitting at the moment. Importantly and pleasingly to report that we're currently, so at the end of December, we were sitting at 55% of the total budget either being committed via contracts and purchase orders or actually expended. So we're sitting significantly higher than we were at this time last year. There's still quite a way to go with that budget, but we're looking at expenditure of $12 million and a further $16.7 million of commitments, which is, gives us a total of that, where are we, $28.7 million, which in a normal year would be almost our entire capital program. It's just that we're sitting at a bigger program this year. Within the program, there's been a number of carry forwards to next year, and we've tried to carry forward 5 projects, and we've also tried to balance that off with bringing some of the projects that were scheduled for next year back into this year's program. Things like the Aquadome, where we've got a scheduled outage. It makes sense to bring some of the projects that were designed for next year forward to be undertaken in that program. So we have now, looking at the program, we have a total of 187 projects, up slightly from the last time we reported on it at 181. Significantly, we've had movements within the program which sees us now with a holding account balance of just over $200,000. So we've had some significant savings. So I think if you look at the report, we've had savings identified across 17 projects, and then we've had some reallocations to projects as well, and that's summarised in Appendix 1 in detail. We've also added some projects to the overall program. Some of that is about breaking down categories. We have a road renewal budget. We're now breaking that down into some of those more significant specific projects so we can manage and report them accordingly. And we've also had a number of successful grant applications. I think there is a number, I think there's 9 there that are new projects that are identified via grant funding. So it's a mix of both reallocations of budgets, new income coming in, and some movement between years in the budget. So, the report is in front of you, along with the the appendix in the attachment. I'd be happy to take any questions on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms Weigel. Questions, councillors? Councillor Rotino.
Not so much a question, but just a statement. Thank you, Fiona, for the great work you've done since you've been in that Office of Project, or the Project Management Office. The reporting that's coming back is really good. It's informative, and we've discussed it at Audit Committee, and we've noticed some improvements. So I want to thank you for your efforts in that area. But also, Is the bark going to be ready for the Mayor to cut the ribbon in Easter?
You'll notice on the program that the bark is still running to schedule. We're not anticipating anything that's going to mean that we can't open it at schedule. So yes, we are looking at having some sort of a soft opening and then having a more formal opening later in the year. But it is still on schedule for an April. An April opening. It's looking pretty good. You've been down.
Can
there
I just
recently?
interrupt? Sorry, Ms. Weigel. Councillor Peltz.
I've just read further down, and I didn't pick it up before, but there's an item here saying reseal Buck and Orbost Road, and I live on that road. I'd like to step out of a possible conflict of interest. I think it's fair to the community that I don't make a decision on this.
Thank you, Councillor Peltz. Sorry for the interruption.
Certainly. So with the bark program, it is it's on schedule. We're very pleased that it's on schedule. It's very close to budget, so we're very pleased with that as well, given it's our largest single project in the budget this year.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Holton. Councillor Toohey.
Just a comment in regards to the design work funding for the cenotaph. I'm really pleased to see that in there.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, do we have a mover? Thanks, Councillor Toohey. Seconder, Councillor Attino. Thank you. Any further speakers to the motion? No? There's no further speakers. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? This motion carried unanimously 7. Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Weigel. Okay. Before we shut the door. Number 6, urgent and other business. No. He doesn't have to go. Can you open the doors back up? We're still in open business. Thank you. Number 6, urgent and other business.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to bring to the attention of Council an item called the Lindenau Valley Water Security Project. And I'd like to move a motion that Council advocate for a copy of the 2018 feasibility study undertaken by Southern Rural Water so we can better understand the implications and options for this critical Lindenau Valley horticultural industry. This is important to our region because 6 of the top 10 salad producers in Australia are located right here in the Lindenau Valley. Directly $120 million revenue of product comes out of the Lindenau Valley, and a further $250 million of value-added product comes out of the Lindenau Valley. But most importantly and critical to our region is the 1,200 jobs associated directly with the vegetable industry in the Lindenau Valley. So I therefore move that.
Thanks, Councillor Attino. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Roberts. Okay, further speakers?
If I can speak to it, Madam Mayor, the reason...
Oh, do we have to?
Yes, I think we actually need...
Process, please, Madam Mayor. This is to be accepted. This is nothing to do with you. This is... Councillor Attino is asking that this matter be introduced as a matter of... We're not debating the matter or speaking to the matter yet. He's already put this up, and we should be debating whether we should admit it as urgent and other business. So, because I'd like to speak against that, because I can't see why in the world a report where a CEO can just go and ask for it, it needs to be a piece of urgent business at this late time of a Tuesday evening. So that's why I wanted the process to be followed.
So do we have
properly.
a seconder to bring it to urgent and other business? Thanks, Councillor Roberts. Okay, so the motion is now...
Yeah,
Okay.
look, the reason I would like to have it as a formal motion, I think it's critical. This issue's been around for 10 years and unfortunately the only time it ever rears its head again is when we're in drought and it's too late. So if I can get the support around the table to have it as a formal motion, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Roberts, do you wish to speak? Councillor Ellis.
Asking for the report is not the problem, and I'm quite happy to go along with that, but I just don't see this as a piece of really urgent business. I can't see why we as a council can't turn to our Chief Executive Officer and say, Mr Basford, can you please ring your counterpart at Southern Rural Water and ask that a copy of that report be made available for the reasons Councillor Ratina's outlined. I mean, they're valid enough, but this is not urgent and other business. You know, this is something that could be just handled on a routine matter. Asking the Mayor to speak to, being in her office tomorrow morning, asking the CEO to do something like this. Yeah, the points he's got there, all valid, not a problem, but this is not really urgent business. This is not something that's going to turn the organisation over, or it's so critical that a day or two can't pass without us getting that information. And I'm sure Southern Rural Water would be more than happy to do that. I'm not involved with Councillor Ratima. I know some secret or some issue, you know, in water politics that we're not aware of. But on the outset, no, well, it is, and water politics are tougher than I think local government. If you look at the Murray-Darling. So I say, councillors, think about this, that there's no real urgency with this, and that the CEO just be requested and that he just ring and get the damn.
Any other speakers?
Yeah, may I say something? Well, if we deal with it quickly now, Dick, we'll get it out of the way and then we can get on with the other business.
No, it's not. This is not life and death stuff, but it is a matter of process.
If we just deal with it now and get it done. That's my suggestion, and then we won't have to go back to it.
Okay, so I'll put it to the vote that this be submitted under urgent and other business. All those in favour? All those against? Motion carried 6-2. Thank you, okay.
I can stomach the other business, but I don't see it as urgent.
The motion is now on the table, so would you like to speak to it further, Councillor Ratino?
I don't want to hold people up, but look, really, just to put this into perspective, if supporting on what Councillor White said tonight, the irrigators out there are on stage 9, stage 10, there's no more water. There's 1,200 jobs tied up with that industry, directly and indirectly. Now, to put that into perspective, if there was 12,000 jobs at risk in Melbourne, do you think it would be urgent in other business? So I'm putting it in perspective as to why it should be urgent in other business. Thank you.
My turn for a right to reply on that last comment.
Well, it's...
Because I think that's just to be cheap.
Councillor Ratino's moved the motion. So a seconder to speak.
Who's the seconder? Yeah, Roberts, yeah.
Okay. A speaker against the motion.
I'm only just going to say, look, that last comment of Councillor Ratino's is a bit emotive. Let's get that. Let's get the report and then analyse it and see what it tells us and what we can do to assist our horticultural industry. I'm not against getting the report, I just don't think we need the emotion.
Councillor Peltz.
Yeah, no, I would like to see the Southern Rural Water, coming and addressing us and giving us a presentation on it, so that we can have a cross-table discussion about it. And I wish you had have said before that about the drought issue in Lindenow, because that would have been more relevant to my vote, because I didn't actually... Yeah, well, I just didn't put two and two together when you put it there, because you've put a few things up tonight, particularly which you haven't ever done in the past, and you've just thrown them at us at the last minute. So, well, I wasn't there, was I? Yeah, would have been nice to have received a bit of warning, that's all.
Councillor Toohey.
I'd just like to make a comment. The fact is that people who are not able to farm, if we go to level 10 restrictions, that is highly emotive for those people out there and for people who rely on those jobs for an income. So it is, Councillor Ellis, it is an emotive thing. And I say that because I used to live out there and I know a lot of people out there. And that is the way it is. You know, we accept it under other business. I'm happy with that.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Unanimous. There you go.
Thank you.
Table, please, Mr. CEO.
Okay, motion carried. Can I have someone...
I'm happy for Council will now close the meeting to the public in accordance with the provisions of Section 89(2)(d) of the Local Government Act 1989 to consider items 7.1 and 7.2 as these items relate to contractual matters.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's not confidential. We skip general business.
We don't have a general business item. We're urgent another business.
Right, sorry.
We're still on, are we?
Jackson, it could be urgent business.
I just thought I'd ask a question.
Okay, I think...
Madam Mayor, we did move into
camera, yes.
camera, so the streaming should stop unless